Sup KBA squad, this is Last Shelter. Now following on from October P2's update, which had the Stellar Scarlet Siren making up some of those awesome meta APC combos, November P1 is a surprise, and if you were hoping it was going to be Death Rider, Wrath or Kamikaze, sadly you're going to have to wait a little bit longer towards the end of this year. Huntress represents still a much better update than say Lone Wolf, who I'm expecting to still drop anytime soon, but it means that she could still split some of those trios if you had your eye on them. SX Huntress for vehicles is joined alongside S4 Commissar, shooters, and S1 Cincinnatus. So while those pre-SX heroes are definitely more irrelevant, Huntress is still a very good damage dealer that we are going to talk about now. I want to give a shout out to our Last Shelter partner, Leo's VIP Club. We had the Storm Bomber and the Lost Paradise base skin drop earlier in the week. If you did miss out on those and want to get your hands on it, the Lost Paradise representing a plus 10% training speed for shooters, that also helps your T10, or even any of the other base and APC skins that you had in mind, then make sure you check out Leo's VIP Club catalog where you can purchase it directly. I'll put a link down to his Discord and any of his channels down in the video description. Alright KBA squad, so the main headliner, Huntress, still being very good. We also have a rotation of these combat development heroes, Drill Master, Master Marksman, and the Mechanic, which for some of you, if you are trying to build up those troops, get them very quick, especially if you are in a competitive Eden season and you find yourself running out of troops. These development heroes are going to make a very big difference. Now I'm going to touch on this, but I will do a separate video diving into these combat development heroes and the wider support heroes. You probably need to pick some of these heroes at some point if you aren't spending on Project Hero, or even if you are doing so. Out of the three, I would always suggest the Mechanic because he is the combat development hero for vehicles, which you are going to be running most of the time. The others for shooters and fighters, while very useful, you will always find yourself relying on vehicles for a day-to-day. These legendary combat development heroes are pretty expensive to unlock their skills. You will need probably a total of at least 4 copies to make them worthwhile. You can unlock the training speed plus 25% and fuel upkeep minus 25%, a second copy. Then you can increase the training counts by 2,500, so just under 10,000 troops per training cycle. You do need 3 copies to get that 60% boost, so I'd actually suggest unlocking this first before you do the training count. If you are flourishing with hero tokens and still need to get these combat development heroes, they do cost slightly less. They are cheaper per fragments and you do need fewer fragments, so 1,200. Then it's worthwhile doing so. But if you have only a few hero tokens like myself, just 3,040, you pretty much don't have the luxury of picking them up, but I thought I'd talk about them in this drop. So first off, let's address the elephants in the room, Cincinnatus and Commissar. They cost 2,400, just 600 less of an SX hero, and I would just 100% pass, especially on Commissar. He is one of those heroes that you are going to split and use for hero reconstruction to unlock those maxed hero status. Don't do it, a waste of tokens. I think that's pretty much what everyone knows, but just want to make that clear. Cincinnatus, while he is probably still a decent S1 hero, come on, we're an SX now, there's just a far more stronger frontliners and APC mixed combos. You just won't see these first season heroes appearing in the mix, with the exception of Warboss, Professional, and Dragon's Rage, specifically for the active skill marching speed that can help you in Eden season. Otherwise, you should be rocking SX for the majority, and then a few any of S2, S3, S4, but S1 definitely don't. Crochet, Shadow, even Retrograder, there's just far more that you can use as replacements. And while his skill 8, 60% combat skill is nice, you could also do some hero reconstruction stuff because he does appear in the Hopeness lab, but definitely do not pick him up in the token shop. Now that's out of the way, let's of course talk about Huntress, and I can probably share quite a few insights and experience on whether she is worth it or just to help ease your mind whether you should pick your tokens, because I do have her maxed and I do have her hero reconstructed decent. So outside of Captain Ivanov and Death Rider, then is Huntress, who is that damage dealer. She is normal attack focused and is pretty beastly. Within the first 3 turns, she will always target the specific enemy position opposite her. So if you put her in the back row, she will target the back row for the first 3 turns. After that, her attacks are dealt from a normal attack perspective, so she would be targeting the front thereafter. Her main skill is Deadly Claws. This one's very deadly. If the target's troops is less than 50%, then she would actually deal more damage, which makes it much more formidable to actually erase an entire row and just make that APC a little bit more crippled with the overall strength. A Wild Pounce tends to activate pretty reasonably and has an overall 25% chance to inflict suppression on one random enemy for 1 turn. She's very focused, so she's not going to be your high spread. She's really going to focus one at a time. Because of that, she becomes more specialized and more specialist to just try and clear any stubborn heroes within a tough formation that you're going against, whether that's in garrisons, tiles, world center, gates, anything like that. Previously, I would have said she's really effective. Major Ana and Predator were kind of the ones to really boost Huntress, just because they amp up the normal attack frequency and therefore allow her to unleash more of these hero skills. Sadly, probably since last season, that formation doesn't work as well anymore and is definitely not as good as what it used to be. So because there's no healing abilities in that formation, then you'll pretty much find that will run out. Is kind of different from Cyclone, Ana, and Captain Ivanov, which works super well as an ultra attack formation. Just because Ivanov targets much wider array and also buffs himself up. Huntress doesn't have any sort of self buff like Death Rider, Nomad, and Ivanov, so she does require a lot of high support with her. And I always find if you're running an Predator, you get the best chance of that. If you remove, let's say, Predator, you see a noticeable decrease in Huntress's power levels and how formidable she is as a damage dealer. There are sort of off-meta alternatives that you can use with Huntress. Crochet, Ana, and Huntress works well. Anything that kind of increases the normal attack frequency. Cyclone doesn't work as well with Huntress. Cyclone just works much better with Captain Ivanov or even Death Rider. I do have maxed Ana and Predator, and I actually don't really run that anymore. My one BB set combo that I run tends to be Heaven's Redemption, Retrograde, and Death Rider. Some others in between, whether those are healers or just an all vehicle formation, which is a shame because I do have Huntress maxed, but I tend to find that she will falter a lot more until she kind of gets any other new heroes that appear to amp up normal attacks or just bring her back into the metas. She's going to be a tougher one, I would say, to work into your APCs, especially if you have the other stronger ones, whether that's Dawn, Scorpion, Siren, Flare, Dawn. Huntress is really just maybe even a 4th APC or just out of it. You might just prefer other alternatives. So it's a bit of a tough one. I do like Huntress. I focused on a lot in the previous season because that was what the meta was, but it just goes to show how metas change and how one thing can suddenly fall off like a cliff. Huntress sadly is affected by that, so she would maybe make another vehicle formation, which isn't a bad thing. If you have Death Rider already and you're kind of struggling for hero tokens, and with if you need more copies of Death Rider or Kamikaze or Wrath sort of featuring in before the end of the year, and you don't have that much tokens, you can actually get by without Huntress. I know it hurts me, it pains me to say that since I have Huntress maxed, but she's really just not as effective as previously. She's more of a specialist damage dealer now, so in certain situations where you do want that attack to be focused on an enemy that's maybe out of reach in the mid or the back row, then Huntress can fit in there well. I guess if you have a chance to max her from 3 copies, then I would say go for it, just to really get more from her in the Hopeness lab. Reconstruct with might, tactical might, just go all crazy on that, so she kind of at least buffs her damage output without solely relying on those other support heroes. If you have 2 copies and you have some hero tokens spare, then I would say yes, 3 copies would make her usable. If you just have 1 copy or no copies, then I will say pass. She's just not really one of those game changers for the long term. That is November P1. Huntress is still being a very good update, but just giving a wider context of how valuable she is this season. That obviously could all change, like how we saw with Siren, who was off the grid and suddenly in the meta. So Huntress maybe just be out of the loop and she could be brought in later on. I guess the call is yours. Those would be the scenarios where I'd say it's reasonable to, but yeah, if you already have Death Rider, a max Death Rider, you can kind of pass on the Huntress, since Death Rider is just crazy stronger than the Huntress. But if you want to be completionist, go for it. So thanks a lot, KBA squad. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section down below. You can see more Last Shelter on my Phoenix Plays YouTube channel. I have been improving the playlist to sort of break it down among hero drops, token shops, Hopeness Lab, and more gameplay action across Eden and all of the season formats. So do check it out, and I'll see you in the next video. But until then, keep being awesome. Peace.